Rain poured down in sheets that night, soaking the streets of a small, forgotten town on the edge of the city. The wind howled, bending the trees and rattling old window panes. Inside a rundown workshop, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, a man sat fixing the engine of a rusty pickup. His hands were calloused, stained with oil, his face tired but kind. His name was Daniel Harris, a single dad doing his best to survive each day with his little boy Noah, after losing his wife 2 years ago. The workshop wasn't just his job, it was their home. A cot behind the shelves, a small stove, and a few photographs taped to the wall. Life was hard, but Daniel never complained. Every night he'd tuck Noah into bed and whisper, "We'll make it, son. I promise." That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, Daniel was locking up when he heard something. A faint knock on the metal door. He frowned. No one ever came this late. He opened it slowly, and there they were. 2 little girls, no older than 7, standing in the rain. Their clothes were soaked, their small hands clutching each other tightly. One of them spoke, her voice trembling. "Sir, can we stay here for tonight? We're lost. We don't know where our daddy is." Daniel froze. He looked past them. No car, no adult in sight. Only darkness and rain. He hesitated, but then saw their lips trembling, their shoes filled with water. He knelt down. Hey, it's okay. Come in, both of you." He brought them inside, wrapping them in a blanket, setting them near the small heater. Noah peeked from the cot, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Dad." "Who are they?" "Just some lost angels," Daniel said softly. "They'll stay with us tonight." He made them warm soup with what little he had, canned beans, some bread. The girls ate quietly, shy but grateful. When Daniel asked their names, one whispered, "I'm Lily," and she's Rose. Twins, identical except for the small freckle under Lily's eye. "Where are your parents, girls?" he asked gently. "We were with our nanny," Rose said. "She stopped the car to make a call, and we got out to see the lights. And then she was gone." Daniel's heart sank. He couldn't imagine his own Noah lost out there in the storm. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll find your daddy in the morning." That night, the storm worsened. The roof leaked, so Daniel moved the cot closer to the heater. He covered the 3 children with his only spare blanket. He himself stayed awake on the chair, watching the rain beat against the window. Every few minutes he looked at them, their tiny hands, their peaceful faces. He smiled faintly. "Whoever their father is," he murmured, "I hope he knows how lucky he is." By morning, the storm had passed. The sun broke through the clouds, painting everything gold. Daniel made breakfast, burnt eggs, but the twins laughed anyway. Noah showed them his toy car, and for a while the workshop was filled with laughter it hadn't heard in years. Then a black SUV pulled up outside. The sound of polished shoes splashing through puddles, followed by sharp, panicked voices. Daniel stepped out, just as a tall man in a long coat rushed forward, flanked by security guards. His face was pale, his eyes frantic. "Lily!" "Rose!" he shouted. The girl's head snapped up. "Daddy!" They ran to him, arms flung wide. He dropped to his knees, holding them both, tears streaming down his face. "My God, my girls!" Daniel stood there, stunned. The man looked up. Expensive suit. Watch that cost more than Daniel's truck. He was someone powerful, someone used to control, yet in that moment, he was just a father. One of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, this man, he must have taken them in during the storm." The man approached Daniel. "Is that true? You found them?" Daniel nodded awkwardly. They knocked on my door last night. I just did what anyone would." The man's jaw tightened, his eyes softening. "Not anyone," he said quietly. "Many would have turned them away." He extended his hand. "I'm Marcus Bellamy." Daniel blinked. The name sounded familiar. Marcus Bellamy, the billionaire CEO whose name was always in the news. The father of the twins standing beside him. Daniel shook his hand, his grip firm but humble. "Daniel Harris." Marcus looked around the small workshop, the peeling paint, the broken tools, the makeshift bed in the corner. Then his gaze returned to Daniel. "You have a son?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, Noah." Marcus's eyes softened again as he spotted the boy peeking from behind the workbench. "Come here, Noah." Noah stepped forward shyly. Marcus crouched to meet his eyes. "Thank you for taking care of my girls, buddy." Noah smiled proudly. "Daddy says we always help people." Marcus looked up at Daniel, visibly moved. "Oh, you've taught him well." He reached into his coat and pulled out a checkbook, but Daniel raised a hand. "Please don't. I didn't do it for money." Marcus stopped, studying him in silence. "Most people would have taken the reward." Daniel shook his head. "Most people never lost something they loved enough to understand how it feels." There was a long pause. Then Marcus smiled, a small, genuine smile rarely seen in his world. "You're a good man, Daniel Harris." That could have been the end. But something about Daniel's quiet dignity stayed with Marcus. The next day, Daniel heard a knock again. When he opened the door, Marcus stood there, not with guards, not with cameras, just holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might want to talk," he said. They sat together for hours. Marcus listened to Daniel's story, how he lost his wife in an accident, how he worked nights to keep Noah fed, how he fixed cars to pay for his son's school. Marcus was silent for a long time. "You know," he said finally, "I have everything money can buy, but I don't think I've ever had what you have." Daniel frowned. "And what's that?" "Peace," Marcus said simply. They stayed in touch after that. Marcus offered Daniel a job, head mechanic at one of his company's facilities, with full benefits. Daniel refused at first, proud and humble, but Marcus insisted. "It's not charity, it's gratitude." Months passed. The 2 families grew close. Lily and Rose would visit every weekend, laughing with Noah as they played in the workshop Marcus helped rebuild. And one evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Marcus and Daniel stood outside, watching their children chase each other in the yard. "You saved my world that night," Marcus said. Daniel smiled quietly. "No, your girls saved mine." And in that moment, 2 fathers, one rich, one poor, realized something that would stay with them forever. It wasn't wealth that made a man rich. It was compassion, the kind that reached across worlds and turned strangers into family. From that day on, the workshop wasn't just a place of work. It was a symbol, proof that kindness, no matter how small, could bridge the widest gaps. And sometimes the richest hearts were found in the poorest homes. Tapping against the tin roof of Daniel's small apartment like 1,000 restless fingers. He was a single dad, working 2 jobs just to make sure his little boy, Sam, never slept hungry. Daniel had just returned from his janitor shift at a hotel when he noticed 2 small figures huddled under a bus stop across the street. They were twins, maybe 6 years old, shivering in thin dresses, their shoes soaked through. He hesitated for a second. It was late, and he didn't know who they were or where their parents could be. But something in their frightened eyes reminded him of Sam. Without thinking twice, he ran across the street with an umbrella and knelt beside them. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. One of the girls looked up, her lips trembling. "We lost Daddy. He said he'd come back, but it's been hours." Daniel's heart sank. He looked around. The streets were empty. The buses had stopped running. He couldn't just leave them there. "Come on," he said gently. "You can stay at my place tonight. It's warm and safe. We'll find your dad in the morning." He led them into his small apartment, one tiny room with a couch, a bed, and a flickering heater. Sam woke up rubbing his eyes. "Dad, who are they?" "Just friends for tonight," Daniel said, smiling. "They got lost." Sam nodded and immediately offered them his blanket. The girls smiled shyly. Soon, Daniel was heating up soup, and laughter began to fill the room, soft, tired, but full of warmth. Later that night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Daniel sat by the window, staring out at the rain. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl's father. What kind of man loses his children like that? The next morning, Daniel took the girls to the nearby police station to report what happened. But before he could enter, a convoy of black cars screeched to a stop in front of them. A tall man in a suit stepped out, his eyes wild with worry. He ran toward the twins and dropped to his knees. "Lily! Emma!" he cried, pulling them into his arms. "Oh my God, you're safe!" Daniel froze. The man was none other than Richard Hayes, the city's most powerful millionaire, CEO of Hayes Industries. "Sir," Daniel stammered, "they were at the bus stop last night. I just couldn't leave them there." Richard looked up, tears in his eyes. "You took them in? A stranger?" Daniel nodded. "I did what any father would." The twins looked up and said softly, "Daddy, he made us soup and told stories." "He's nice." Richard stood slowly, adjusting his coat. For a moment he said nothing. Then he stepped closer to Daniel. "You have no idea what you've done for me," he said quietly. "I thought I'd lost them forever." Daniel just smiled. "I'm glad they're safe now." But before he could walk away, Richard stopped him. "Wait, you're a janitor, right?" Daniel nodded, a little embarrassed. Richard's eyes softened. "You're exactly the kind of man I want working with me. Honest, selfless, and with a heart that doesn't wait for recognition." Daniel blinked, unsure what he meant. "Come to my office tomorrow," Richard continued. "I have a job for you. Not as a janitor, as a facilities manager. And your son will never have to worry again." Daniel's mouth fell open. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," Richard said with a smile. A week later, Daniel walked into the same office he used to clean. But this time, he wore a new suit, given to him by the CEO himself. Sam was in a good school, and life had taken a turn neither of them ever imagined. Sometimes, the twins and their father would visit Daniel's home. They'd all sit together for dinner, laughing, talking, living proof that kindness can bridge worlds apart. And every night, when Daniel looked at his son sleeping peacefully, he remembered that one rainy night, when opening his door to two lost girls opened the door to a brand new life. Because sometimes, helping a stranger doesn't just change their world, it changes yours too. Weeks passed, and Daniel's life began to feel like a dream he never dared to dream. Every morning, he walked into the tall glass building of Hayes Industries, not to mop floors or empty bins, but to lead a small team, managing facilities with respect and dignity. People greeted him differently now. The same guards who once barely noticed him now smiled and said, "Good morning, Mr. Daniels." Still, Daniel never forgot who he was or where he came from. He'd bring extra coffee for the janitors and security guards, share lunch with the drivers, and remind them with a humble grin, "I was one of you not long ago." Richard Hayes, the millionaire whose daughters he'd helped, often called him into his office for small talks. Over time, the two men developed a quiet friendship built on mutual respect. One afternoon, as Daniel was checking maintenance reports, Richard invited him for lunch. "Daniel," he said, "you've changed this place. The way you treat people. It's different. Everyone feels it." Daniel smiled. "Maybe it's because I know what it feels like to be invisible." Richard nodded slowly, looking thoughtful. "I wish I had your kind of heart years ago." Just then, the office door burst open. The twins, Lily and Emma, ran in laughing, carrying flowers. They handed them to Daniel. "These are for you, Uncle Danny," Emma said. "Daddy says you're our hero." Daniel knelt, smiling as the girls hugged him. "You don't have to bring me anything, princesses. Just promise me you'll keep being kind, okay?" Lily nodded. "Like you." Their laughter filled the office, and Richard's eyes softened. He watched Daniel interact with his daughters, gentle, patient, warm, the kind of father figure every child deserved. That night, as Daniel returned home, he found a note taped to his door. It was from the school. Sam had been awarded a scholarship for outstanding performance and character. He sat down, his hands trembling slightly, as tears welled up in his eyes. All those years of struggle, of sleepless nights, of doing his best with what little he had. It was finally paying off. He looked at his son, who ran up excitedly, saying, "Dad, Mr. Hayes came to school today. He said you're the bravest man he knows." Daniel chuckled softly, ruffling his son's hair. "Nobody. I'm just a man who didn't turn away when someone needed help." The following weekend, Richard invited Daniel and Sam to his mansion for dinner. It was grand, chandeliers, music, and warmth everywhere. But what surprised Daniel most wasn't the luxury. It was how human the place felt now. Richard raised a toast to Daniel, A man who taught me that true wealth isn't in money or power, but in kindness and heart. Everyone clapped. Daniel lowered his head, humbled beyond words. After dinner, as the kids played in the garden, Richard pulled Daniel aside. "You know," he said quietly, "when I first saw you with my daughters, I saw a man who gave without expecting anything. I realized that's the kind of person my late wife would have wanted me to be." Daniel said nothing. He simply placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. "We all just do what's right, sir. That's what matters." Richard smiled faintly. "You've changed my life, Daniel, and my daughters. You'll always have a place with us." From that night on, their families became inseparable, celebrating birthdays, school events, and quiet evenings filled with laughter. Years later, when Sam graduated college, with Richard proudly standing beside Daniel in the audience, he said, "Dad, I'm going to help people too." "Just like you did that night." Daniel's eyes glistened. "That's all I ever wanted, son." The rain fell again outside, just like the night he found the twins. He looked up at the sky and smiled softly, because sometimes destiny hides in small acts of compassion. One open door, one shared meal, one night of shelter, and sometimes the greatest riches a man can earn come from the heart he gives away freely.